So welcome to the AT Construction Podcast. I'm Brad Levin, and today we have with us Mr. Ted Bainbridge. Welcome, Ted.
I'm excited to be here, Brad.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. You know, you're on the other side of the mic this time. Ted, you just started a podcast. You're also the president and founder of Build Magazine, which we'll dive into. So it's going to be a little bit easier, less stressful, right, when you're just being interviewed on this side.
I don't know. Every time I'm with you, it's less stressful. It's just fun.
That is true. Ted and I have developed a great friendship, which we'll get into here. But, you know, to start this conversation, how did you get into publication?
Well, I grew up in Toronto, played a little golf, went to school in Georgia, came back, and it was snowing, and I was sick and tired of snow. I hadn't seen it in 4 years. So we left Toronto, moved to Vancouver, and I was working for a big multinational corporation and did fairly well after 2.5 years. And they said, I was asking for a career path, and they said, well, we want you'd be perfect for the executive office. We want you to move to Chicago or Toronto. And I said, I quit. I was
No more snow.
No more snow. I was in Vancouver. It was great. And so my father-in-law was a partner with Deloitte & Touche, and he had a client doing a publication. So we bought the rights to Western Canada and the U.S., and that's how it all started. And it's morphed and evolved. And I mean, that was 30 years ago. So you can't do anything without change.
But this is interesting. So, you know, we speak a lot about the podcast connections, right? Life is about connections. It's connecting those dots. You know, the people you meet, it opened up doors and opportunities. So for you, there's a relationship at Deloitte, right? One of the big four accounting firms. They had a client that's in print. And then with that client, you actually met with them. That introduction was made, and now you build that relationship, and now you're buying the rights to that territory.
Correct.
And that's how most of these big publications are. And was this in the construction industry, or what was the publication itself?
It was actually in the visitor industry, and we did that until actually this year, and COVID, for the most part, wiped us out. We started Build Magazine in 2016, and our whole model was to target wealthy people building or renovating expensive homes, and we only wanted the A-list of people in the building trade, so none of the big box stores, none of the production builders. We just wanted the cream of the crop. And when I went to my builder, my wife and I built 3 custom homes in Bend, Oregon. And now we're building one here in Scottsdale with you, which is great. And I went to him and I said, here's the concept. And he goes, Teddy, I love the idea, but how are you going to make sure you don't have any of the big box stores? And I said, simple, we're going to do it 100% by referral. I'm a golfer. I'd love to join Augusta. It doesn't matter how much money you've got. If you don't get the invite, you don't get included. So that was the premise.
I love that strategy, and I will say it's a bit risky when you're looking at building a company and it's straight referral, especially in print, right? It's a great idea, and I don't want to just say idea because you've executed this, which is extremely impressive, Ted, because there is the temptation, right? If you're developing this, there is still cost to the publication. Mm-hmm. There's time, there's commitments, right? There's production, all this stuff. And so it's easy, I would say it's easy for me outside looking in to say, well, maybe we do need to go to a big box store. They're going to take a couple pages. How have you stayed true to just that mentality and the goal of the magazine to say, look, this is refer only. This is the cream of the crop. This is how we're going to build this thing.
Part of it was dumb luck, honestly. When we first started out, the first place I went to was my builder Jim Yozamp at PacWest up in Bend. And so I shared with him the idea, and I said, look, at this point, there's nothing to buy. I was doing market research, Brad. And so he loved the idea so much, and he gave me referrals for about 10 different people that a lot of them I knew because they were involved in the last house we built. And then I went and had lunch with the gal who owns Sotheby's for the whole state of Oregon. Her name's Debbie Tebbs. I've known her for 20 years. She's a dear friend. And I said, I've got an idea. And I literally had it on my iPad, and I said, I want to create a magazine targeting the wealthy. And she goes, and I said, Debbie, there's nothing to buy. I literally want you to poke holes in this. And she goes, Ted, this is a great idea. She goes, where's your rate card? I want to advertise. That's my clientele. And I said, no, you can't. She goes, what? I said, no. She goes, why not? I don't want any realtors. My buddy owns a Rolex store up there. He wants the back cover. I said, no. And we, by dumb luck, we made the decision early on. We were just going to stick to the vertical of anything involved in building a dream home. That's who the clientele would be. And 6 years later, now we're in Naples, Scottsdale, Jackson Hole, Hawaii, all these high-end areas. And it is the one defining fact. And people, in our second year, there was a builder in Whitefish, and he goes, Ted, what's your plan for year 2? I love the magazine. You've done an incredible job. And I said, we're going to expand it. He goes, so you're going to add jewelry stores, plastic surgeons, cigars, jets? And we go, nope. And he goes, that's why I like what you guys do. And by honestly sticking to your guns, that's what's allowed us to grow in a market that most people say is dwindling, being print. Bad print is dying. Good print, people love it.
There is something unique for those listening that haven't seen your magazine, and we'll get into this later, especially as we dive into the marketing side. I mean, even you've created this box, right? This mailer that's just unbelievable, and we'll put some content here on our press release for people to see that. But what you've done with that is there's a feel to the magazine. And there is some truth to that, right? A lot of us have seen print media, and as you mentioned, it's filled with a lot of advertisements that, yeah, they may be luxury brands. You know, you mentioned Rolex, Russ Line, Sotheby's. I mean, these are staples, right?
Yep.
But vertical construction, the construction industry, they're not staples of that. And although they're related in some ways, they're not construction. So when you're looking at putting a vendor in, referrals super important, but also how are you vetting them? Are you limiting, saying just architects, designers, builders, suppliers? I mean, how do you, that net that you're casting, how defined is that for who's going to be able to advertise?
So we look at them and we really treat them like partners. And anything that goes into building the custom homes that you build, anything that goes into those, so appliances, steel workers, windows, anything that goes into creating that dream, that's who we target. But if it's an insurance company, if it's a fringe player like a chimney sweep, an accountant, lawyer, none of that, it doesn't fit. And so when people look at our magazines, because we've got all the best people in the industry, locally in the industry, they look at the photography and they go, this is stunning, and I've never seen anything like it before. And we hear it, Brad, we are so humbled because we hear it all the time, everywhere we go.
I love that. So talk me back as we rewind this a little bit from just your story here. You had mentioned, you were in print media, but for the visitor, right? Tourism.
Correct.
And this is in Canada, Western Canada, right?
And the U.S.
And the U.S.
Yeah.
And so what made you take that plunge to say, okay, we're doing well. We have, because I'm sure even before COVID, right? You had your demo, you're doing well, things are working itself out. What makes you make that plunge and jump to say, okay, let's diversify a little bit and we're going to go into construction? What drew you into that?
I guess it was just a mindset because I'm always open to looking at ideas and trying to figure out, is that an actual business? Is that an actual idea? Which is why when we did the prototype, I've been a huge fan of Lux Magazine, and my wife and I, we've owned 8 or 9 houses. It's a combination of renovating them and it's a combination of building them from new. So we've been getting this magazine for 10 years and we just think it's beautiful. But I like to think that things are a little bit tighter and there's a certain design we were looking for. And once again, when we did the research, talking to Sotheby's, talking to my builder, talking to some of the other people in the trade, they all said, this is a great idea. And the longer we've gone down this road, so now we're going into year 7, 83% of our clients buy from one year to the next. They love what we're doing. Now we've got these podcasts. You and I are going to, hopefully next week, be able to do the pilot for a TV show. So it's a function of never turning off your brain and never going, you know what, that's good enough. Let's just keep milking the cow. No, you got to stay fit. Keep looking for new ideas, new ways to keep your partners interested.
I love that you've taken that strategy because I was on a podcast recently with the Modern Craftsman. And the question was, these other businesses that some of us may have. And the question is asked, well, do you start a business to just strengthen the current business or is it an opportunity, right? And that's one, and for me, I've always looked at, well, there's an opportunity, right? And that's what you mentioned. It's, construction, the Build magazine was not started to supplement your visitor guide, right? Or your visitor travel. No. This is an opportunity you're passionate about where you say, hey, I can do this better. So a good example, you have Uber, right? You have the taxi industry. It's been working for generations. And Uber comes in and they say, look, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but we're going to do it better. We're going to make this more seamless. We're going to make it more feasible for people as they're traveling, right? And it's blown up. Same thing as you, where you look at something, Lux, which has their demographic and, they're a great partner of ours as well. But you say, hey, we can cater specifically to our client. And not only are we going to do that, not only are we going to now hit these different markets, but additionally, we're going to double down. We're going to do the podcast, we're going to do the TV show, the video. And so all these things, bring value. And really for us as contractors, anybody's looking for value. And that's where this is important, because as print media has changed, and we'll get into this is where you're adding value in other ways too.
Well, and I never look at other magazines as competition. It's just not my DNA. I can only be the best Ted I can be. I can't control my wife. I can't control my kids. And I talk to my team about this. Just be the best you can be, and let the competition, let them do whatever they want to do. But there's always I'm a firm believer in abundance. There's always room for somebody else to do a good job, and it just makes the whole playing field better.
It's funny because Brian Harris, who I had early on, he was big on this, that he said there's the mentality of abundance and a mentality of scarcity, right? And the people, when you look at entrepreneurs, what makes them successful, what makes you successful, Ted, I know you well enough, they're positive people, right? Entrepreneurs are positive, and they look at things as being, there's not scarcity, right? They know, hey, I am who I am, I'm confident in my ability, and I can go perform. And there's value to that. People see that, they're attracted to it. But that positivity is what carries you through, because you and I both know, even as successful as Build Magazine has been now, I'm sure it wasn't perfect from day one. There's bumps and bruises,
Yeah.
There's challenges in publication. So speak to that as you encounter these difficult times. Hey, is this going to work? How do you continue to push through just with that entrepreneurship mentality?
So we started in 2016, and it was just coming out of the Great Recession. So things are going along, and then all of a sudden COVID hits, and nobody knows what's going on. Last March, we didn't know if business was going to boom or if we were headed for another recession like we had back in '08. After 2 months, people go, oh, not only is it booming, it's like drinking from a fire hose. We got more business than we know what to do with, and our biggest problems now are supply chain stuff. So you're not being able to deliver homes on time because you can't get appliances or steel or whatever. And it's just, even the consumer has come to accept it's not Brad's fault. It's just the situation that we're in. And you have to be flexible. And I think you just have to be a little bit patient to deal with the ups and downs. And I always tell people, brands survive ups and downs in any economy. And most people, I had a conversation with a builder, and this is an incredible builder. They build magnificent stuff. And he goes, Ted, you know what? I don't think I'm going to renew this year. And I go, okay, well, why is that? He goes, because I can't quantify it, and I can't see the value of being in a magazine with 20 other builders. And I go, our clients they don't need any business right now. It's all about building their brand. He goes, I've got an incredible brand. We have already built a great brand. And I said, yeah. And you know, another great brand is called a company named Apple. But they continue to market themselves. And the builder, he thought, and he goes, okay, fair enough. He goes, let's continue the discussion. He goes, I'm not ready to commit, but he goes, okay, fair enough. And that's why brands can survive changeover as far as the president and CEO is concerned. That's why they can change through the board of directors. That's why they last 100 years. When you've got a solid brand, you've got a solid brand.
Yeah, that's a really important point to make, because as the economy and as we've changed our mentality with marketing, right? So when I look at this, social media is super valuable in a lot of ways, but it's not everything. And the reason I say that is because although it's allowed us to grow as a company and gain exposure and, vendor relationships and contractor relationships, right, that have bettered our business, it doesn't hit everyone. And the reason being is because I still have a lot of clients and a lot of potential clients that don't want anything to do with social media. They're not on there. They want to be off the grid, essentially, right? They don't want to be part of that for personal reasons, whatever it may be. And print media, it's important because you have to understand demographics and clientele that on LinkedIn, on Instagram, in print media. And for me, as someone who's building the brand and looking at that marketing structure, it's really key, because in construction, you deal with these ebbs and flows, right? I'm fairly young, but I've been through enough recessions, through my childhood and now, to see that it's not going to be like this forever. And
Right.
At some point, we're going to have a correction. And when that does, the companies that have built this stability as far as systems and protocol, they've built branding, if they can weather the storm, if they're prepared for it, when that storm comes, and half of the contractors leave, well, that branding is now key because they've been consistent. And now when it comes out of the recession, they're poised and ready to take off.
Branding also is security. because when we go into a recession, people are a little bit more cautious with the money that they're going to spend. It's not that they're not going to spend money. They just want to make sure they can't take that risk of failure as easily as they could in good times. So what they want to do is they are willing to pay a little bit more when things are down because they want it done right, and they want it done right the first time. That's what brand safety is all about.
It's funny you say that because I sat in a conference. I've said this on the podcast a couple of times, but I was at the LinkedIn Global Conference, and the comment was made that they said personal branding is permanent job security. But you think about that, branding is job security.
Yeah.
You know, the personal brand, the business brand, these weather storms, these are your connectors, right? And it's interesting as you partner, and then Build Magazine's done a phenomenal job. And what's amazing to me is I've sat back and watched, and just a little background, the way Ted and I met. So I'm part of a Builder 20 program, and a Builder 20 I've spoken about. This is, again, going back to social media. I was connected into this. A mentor of mine who's in the building industry pulled me aside and said, hey, Brad, you need to get part of a Builder 20, change our entire company, change my career. And at our event, we were in Whitefish, Montana.
Yeah.
And here's Ted. Ted's there. He has a magazine there. You're there. You know, one of the builders in my group. We meet. And at this point, you had no presence in Scottsdale.
Zero.
None. I mean, you came here, but you didn't have a magazine. And here I am from afar. I meet Ted at this function, you know, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. And then he decides to open up the Scottsdale market. And then quickly you have the top builders, the top architects, the top designers in town. And it's amazing to see what you've built. So talk about how that mentality is you, although Build Magazine had a name, but now you're going into a new market with essentially no connections. And now you're building this amazing little enterprise here.
Yeah, interesting. I was taking the dogs for a walk this morning, oddly enough, with my wife, and I go, you know what, honey, it's kind of cool. The magazine's been out for 8 months, 7 months, whatever it is, and we've got some pretty cool friends here, and it's all been networked through what we're doing. And the comments, I did a podcast yesterday with Toting Sutton from Estes, and he's been around for, I think he's owned it for 25 or 35 years.
Yeah, he's a staple here in Scottsdale.
Yeah, and he's so well respected, and they do such a great job. And I say 25 or 35. You'd think I'd know because I literally did the podcast and talked to him yesterday. But it's funny because as our concern in coming into Scottsdale was we were into boutique high-end markets like Jackson Hole, Sun Valley, Park City, Whitefish, Bozeman, Bend. And then we went into Naples, and that was kind of our first foray into a big city. Now, Naples is 300,000, not 3 million. And then we come to Scottsdale, which we've had a place for 10 years. But I never knew how to wrap my arms around a big city. It's easy. It's super. The building community is really small. And so when you start to talk to people and start to connect the dots, and you were the first, you and John Gurley from Gurley Construction were the first two people we talked to. And then all of a sudden the door started to open up. And it's not like they opened wide open. Everybody didn't go, oh, Ted, you're a great guy. You know, if John or Brad. Oh,
everyone's hesitant to that,
right?
You know, that sales call, right?
And they would look at what we do and they go, because we had street cred. And I don't even look at it that way because I'm too busy, you know, building a business. And they go, okay, you know what? What you're doing is spectacular. Nobody does it, not even close to what we're doing. And this black box idea came out of just a conversation with somebody in Jackson. And so now all of a sudden I deal with, you know, Jaffa Group up in Park City, which is part of your team. I deal with Rob and Shane Woods at Woods Design in Santa Fe.
Part of my group, yeah.
Part of your group. And it was just connecting the dots. And if you follow through on what you say you're going to do, you can have long-term relationships. I always tell people, I don't want you for a year. I want you for a decade. It's just my DNA.
Yeah, but that mentality, I mean, I think that's unique. That's very uncommon, right? In any market that you're looking not just, hey, at this deal, but you're looking at one that's 2 or 3 down the road. And a lot of times, I'll just apply this to the contractor mentality that we're not looking at the big picture, right? We're looking at the job. We're looking at maybe profit margin. We're looking at duration, labor, you know, supply chain. But we're not looking on how is this relationship going to continue on after this project.
Well, maybe most don't, but you definitely do.
I've tried.
I mean, I know you well enough. You are a big picture guy, which takes you from working in your business to working on your business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you have to work on your business. And I know I've had pitfalls and I've had breakdowns in communication with clients, and I've learned from those. The key is that we all learn from those. But yeah, seeing the big picture to realize, hey, this client may be doing this now, but 5 years down the road or 10 years down the road, they may have a career change or a pay raise or whatever it may be, where now they're ready to do secondary project, and that good relationship can morph into something else, or their friend now, and you can really build your business. And I've learned a lot from you, Ted, just watching you, because you have this unique ability, and this is really important for anyone in sales. I'm in sales. All of us are salespeople. And if we're not focusing on sales as business owners, as entrepreneurs, as contractors, we're missing the mark in how we communicate. And what I mean by that, you have this unique ability where you're very persistent, but not overbearing, right? And you have to be. I mean, you'll follow up, but it's not like a nuisance. And you're very good as far as, hey, Brad, who is one of your favorite designers to work with? Who's one of your favorite architects, right? And you kind of pull this information and you go talk to him, make the intro, and that's how you've built this network.
Yeah, it's a fun deal.
Yeah.
I always tell people, like, even if you're a computer programmer, you're in sales. Even if you're an engineer, you're in sales. Why? Because you have to get a date. You have to get a job. You have to sell yourself to somebody, even though you might not be the rainmaker out there going and getting the job site or getting the contract. We all have to look at ourselves and go, okay, how can I communicate better?
But see, everyone in your organization is this way, Ted. I mean, and your wife's this way, Leslie's this way. So what's really important, I think, where we miss the mark is the principal or CEO or the head of BD, business development for your company, your sales arm, may be good at that. But maybe your superintendent's not great at communication, or your in-house framer's not. And that's what's really key, is how do you get from the top level down to the bottom levels of the organization to teach them that, hey, you may just be out there framing, or you may be out there as superintendent, but you need to understand sales. You need to understand communication. You need to understand follow through and returning phone calls. So how have you seen that, or how in all your experience working with different builders, architects, designers, what has made those separate and thrive?
So is your question about when I look at the group of people that we deal with, or within my organization?
Both.
So within my organization, I tell my designers, my office staff, my production coordinator, and Richard has been with me for 21 years, and he is incredible with the computer. He's incredible at sending emails, but he is deathly afraid. And if he was here, he'd tell you the same thing. He hates talking to people on the phone, and yet everybody loves him. But I just go, Richard, it's about communication. It's not about sales. It's about staying in touch with people. Brad, I've seen you operate, and I told you on the golf course, I remember vividly, we're on the 6th hole at the Raven, and I said, how does anybody say no to you? It's just impossible. You're such a nice guy. You're a good-looking guy. You're an athletic guy. You follow through on everything you do. Every conversation I've ever had with you has been true to your word, true to who you are. And that's the easiest thing. And so fortunately for us, we've got about 600 clients, and they're all the best at what they do. And very few of them, maybe a handful, that's it, are full of themselves. They're all humble. They're not afraid to roll up their sleeves. They understand this is all the American dream. They understand that they came from nothing. I mean, you've told me the story that your grandfather was an electrician, and that's how you shocked yourself into
Yes.
being a contractor.
It is that blue collar, growing up, that scarcity mentality, or not mentality, but just living in that and understanding, how that can change, through hard work and communication. But it's funny because I've made enough mistakes to not have an ego, I guess. That happens. We could spend a whole podcast on all the mistakes I've made
But they're the funniest stories.
They are, and I have a lot of those. But but one thing I'll say that's interesting is back to the communication. So I'm seeing this play out right now with the current customer of ours. There's a well-known client in Paradise Valley, and he's well established, and his wife, she's one of the top realtors in town, and great family, and they're super professional, and really what they're looking for from a contractor is like someone that just communicates. They know things aren't going to be perfect, things are supply chain, COVID, whatever, but answer the phone, like respond, right, and communicate. And we were able to finish the project for them, and now they're working on some back-end stuff. They had hired a landscaper and a pool company, and they're working through that. And they're becoming very frustrated because they're not getting return calls or texts and communication. They're missing that. And in fact, he reached out to me today, and he said, hey, just a heads up, you did this project 8 months ago, but we had dug a new sewer line for him because it was an extensive project, and there was some settling in one corner of the driveway. And he had already contacted my super, unbeknownst to me. I didn't even know about it, honestly. When he texted me, he said, I talked to your super. He responded to me in 5 minutes. He's already taken care of it. And so he wasn't even upset that there's an issue, because issues come up.
Sure.
But my superintendent was communicating, and that's been a big goal of ours. Is in our industry, I feel it's very low-hanging fruit with communication. If you can communicate well as a contractor, if you respond to your clients, if you respond to your customers and your network, and people, I can't say this enough, Ted, and this is why you've been a valuable mentor for me, is people, a lot of us just resonate and we just stick to our culture. We just stick to our group. And the more you can network with other builders and other companies and other professional organizations and understand how they do business, you can take those little tidbits of information now and apply them to your own.
Yeah, it's been fascinating, and you were the one who encouraged me to get into the podcasts, of which we've got 3 of them out there now. I think they're entertaining, but that's for...
So explain the name of the podcast. So those listening, we're going to have that in the show notes, but so that they can look that up and start listening.
Yeah, it's called Friends of Build Magazine. And we launched the first one with Brad Levitt, this guy from AFT Construction. You might have heard of him. And Brad's a total rock star, and I've networked Brad enough because I have so much admiration for you. And then we did one with an incredible interior designer, Klaus Baer, up at WRJ in Jackson Hole. We had one come out last week and this one was super funny. Our guest was hilarious, an appliance owner of an appliance operation up in Salt Lake City, Mountain Land Design, Dan Davenport. He was so funny, and it was such an easy podcast. And when I listened to it, I just went, here's a guy who's just a regular guy, didn't come from anything, and now he's got an organization of 150 employees. And everybody that I know on his team absolutely love him. And he'll roll up the sleeves, he'll go drive trucks. And then I'm not sure who we're releasing tomorrow, but every Thursday, thanks to you, we met Greg from Koi Koi, and he does an awesome job. And these things have become fun. And so now we've got, I think, 15 in the can that we'll release every week, and we'll continue to do more. But getting back to your question, as I talk to these people, because your clients are millionaires and billionaires, a lot of the people that we deal with, they came from nothing. And I find the people that came from something, it's harder to be given opportunity than it is to roll up your sleeves and just carve it out yourself. I'm a huge advocate of your biggest failures make your funniest stories. And if you look back on those, the things that fall into your hands or, come easy to you, have no appreciation for them. I tell my kids the same thing, is embrace the tough times. Don't go, oh, this totally sucks. Of course it does. But when you get through it, it's amazing how much better off you are. So our clients have taught us, and if you're willing to listen and be an active listener, it's amazing what you can learn from people. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
It's good. 2 ears, 1 mouth. I mean, listening is something we missed. The communication, the listening, understanding how to read your client and prospect. And I echo what you said about Greg. I mean, he reached out. We became a partner sometime back, and he's been a phenomenal asset, right? And ally for us. He's done a great job. So for you now, Ted, with Build Magazine, what is Build Magazine today? I mean, it's a lot different than it was in 2016. So how has that changed?
Yeah, so it's been a really funny, interesting, enjoyable ride. So in 2016, we had an idea, and today we've got 12 markets that we're adding another 3 or 4 this year, being Palm Beach, Vail, Aspen, and Vegas. Last year, we direct mailed 85,000 magazines to people, high net worth, live in homes over $3 million in certain zip codes, like the one here in Scottsdale, which was a home run. We direct mailed to people in Desert Mountain, Silverleaf, DC Ranch, PV, the highbrow areas. And we got, out of 85,000, we got 60 complaints. That was it.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was...
And what are the complaints? What would they complain about?
Oh, I didn't subscribe to this. You're killing trees. I don't want this. But 60 out of 85,000 is a nothing burger. So it's been interesting. I've never had a product or been involved with a company with the growth trajectory of what we've got, with people that are super, super, super successful, and they all have the same reaction. They look at it and they go, I would never throw this out. I want this on my coffee table.
It is a great magazine, and we're going to have publish some stuff on what you're doing, especially as Black Box. So, I'm always looking at ways. Although, and I had Jeff Eccles on a while ago, and he had talked about that. When you're building a brand and marketing strategy, you have what's called brand artifacts, right? And although we have the process and we have the communication, the ideal client, like these are really key to that successful business. But at the same time, you do need artifacts, and that may be a logo on a truck. It may be a handout you give to someone, a brochure. Mm-hmm. So when you think about the brand artifact that's just building that reputation, as you mentioned, is this goes into that black box. And so what this is a very professional, you think like that, what you mentioned Apple, right? One of the things that draws to Apple is that first off, they're very precise, right? In even if you open their phone, how organized, right? Everything's put together. Like that's really key for them. And Steve Jobs was, it's famous for yelling at his engineer, right? That, hey, no one's going to see this. No, they are going to see this. They won't, but we do.
Right.
And it's demanding that level of quality and execution. And then if you're demanding it on that level, you're going to demand it everywhere. And that transparency to the client is what draws them in. And then the packaging, right? There's the quality, there's a feel, there's a weight to it, there's a packaging. There's something about that, right, that draw people in. You go to Louis Vuitton. My wife loves Louis Vuitton, right? And not that we're an avid subscriber of them, but I have been in there and I've seen how they present things, right, and how they package them. And there's something to be said about that. And that's what you're doing now with the black box.
Yeah, it's amazing when you package something and the reaction we've got from this box. So I'll just quick story on the history of it. We're in the oldest bar in the oldest bar in Wyoming is in Jackson Hole, and it's called the $1 Million Cowboy Saloon. And this was last October. And we're having a beer with this guy, and he goes, "Hey, Ted, are you in the corporate executive offices?" And I go, "No." And it's my wife and I and this guy and his sister works with us. And so as we're driving to Park City the next day, I'm talking to my wife, and I go, that was a really interesting question. Once again, trying to be curious enough to learn from people. That's another thing I tell people. Be curious. You don't have to be a know-it-all. Nobody likes a know-it-all anyway. So just be curious enough to ask a bunch of questions.
Well, I love that you said that. If I interrupt you, it's funny because the thing I reiterate to my team, like, don't expect to know the answer. Just say, I don't know. Right. I don't know. Ask the question. If you don't know what the electrician's doing, ask them, right? I will say, I echoed that. I had a client come in and ask me something. I'm like, I don't know. And he said, I respect you more because you said you didn't know instead of trying to make something up, right?
Right. So here we are. We're driving our motorhome down to Park City, and I said to my wife, I go, that was an interesting question because the reaction we get with our magazine is so humbling. And I said, I think, and I started to add up the numbers. I go, we mailed out about 85,000 magazines. And I said, I rarely, because I'll see the complaints come in because I'm the one, I want the feed on our email. I said, I think we might have gotten, maybe 5 a month, 6 a month, something like that. So I had my distribution gal pull the numbers the next day, and she goes, we had 60 complaints out of 85,000. I go, that seems about right, but it's ridiculously low. So I go, why don't we create a box? And then I said, okay, but it can't be, you can't mail the CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies something in a plastic bag like you would get a normal subscription. It's got to have some sex appeal to it, like an Apple box. And this is us brainstorming as we're driving down. And then we start getting into the HGTV TV show, which we're going to hopefully execute next week. So that took us from that process, and then it was a couple of months later, and this is still percolating in my brain, but I don't know how to pull it off yet. And then I meet this guy who's a good friend of mine here playing golf, and he goes, I manufacture boxes, Tyler with Premier. And I go, hey man, this is my thought. Can you help me? We had bought a lot in Scottsdale. The realtor had given us a beautiful bottle of champagne. It came in a gorgeous box. So you open it up, and once again, my brain's going, okay, this would be perfect. And that's how we developed this thing. And then we're going to put a quote. So there, on one side, there's a little note. When you open it up, there's a little note from me so that the CEO knows why he's getting this. And on the other side is a quote, which was going to be from Frank Lloyd Wright, because that's where we are, Taliesin West. And then Leslie and I are watching the Bay Hill Classic golf tournament in March, and there's a quote from Arnold Palmer that says, the road to success is always under construction. And I went, that's it. I go, that's the quote. And
I need to steal that. I mean, being transparent, I need to steal. It's the best quote. I've never heard that. It's so good.
You haven't?
No.
Oh.
So good, though.
it's a
It's
total
spot
fit,
on,
right?
especially for us.
I know. So I had my the next day I phoned my copyright attorney and I go, do I need to cover myself because I want to use this quote, but I don't want to, with who I'm sending this to, there's no shortcuts. I just won't do it. And they go, well, you should. And I go, should is close enough to, yeah, we will. And they go, well, we can get a hold of the Palmer Foundation. Obviously, he's dead. And so we got a hold of the Palmer Foundation. It took us a month. They came back and they asked me a bunch of questions about me. And they said, we'll give you permission. We really like the idea of what you're doing. And yeah, have at it. And so here we got this quote from Arnold Palmer.
That's
which
amazing.
I think is great.
Even for this, for those listening, I mean, you're thinking of this on very proprietary, and not just a legal thing, but being respectful as well. And I never would have dawned on me, yeah, you put a quote in there that's not yours, but you're asking permission and going down the right channels to make sure that every base is covered.
Yeah, and the Palmer Foundation will get a copy of this box because out of respect for them, and I'm a golfer, obviously, but Arnold Palmer transcends everything. And everything he did was with a flair of class.
I love that. It's just amazing. And I'm going to post a little video about this box, but here's what's key now for those that are in the magazine, right? And this is really key for those of us thinking about our personal brand, personal marketing, especially in regard to print media, and I'll give a quick example before I ask this question. I had a prospective client reach out. They weren't a fit for us for what they were doing. The project wasn't really our wheelhouse. And they had asked for a couple recommendations. I was giving them some, and the feedback, they came back to me a week later and they said, hey, just an FYI, one of the ones you recommended, and they hadn't even called this person yet. They went on their website, they went on their Instagram, and they were like misspelled words. A couple of the photos weren't great. And they said, if they don't care enough to look at the detail of the spelling of what they're transcribing online and on their Instagram
Such a good point.
Website, then they're not going to be a fit for what we're looking for a builder.
Such a good point.
And I never thought of it that way, right? That how, a lot of us are active, we're trying to get content out there, but we have to be very careful about making sure it's delivered in a professional manner because we're looking at the details. We're a detail company, right? That's what we should be. And so for you now, here's Build Magazine. You have this very professional magazine. It looks fantastic. You have the right people in it, the A+ people. You have the flow, the paper, everything, right? You have the box, you're sending out these CEOs. How much more important is it now for a builder who's advertising or an architect to be looking at their bio, to be looking at the text that they're sending you if they're published, the photos they use? How key is that for them, and how much pressure do you put on them to proofread that and have good photography?
So that is just an awesome question. Two things. One is a buddy of mine, and this guy built a company from his garage to 420 employees. They were doing $83 million a year in the radiator business. It's amazing, and I'm sure that you've got a bunch of these clients. It's amazing how people can create wealth in this country.
It is. I have some clients that I'm like, man, I'm in the wrong business. Why did I think of that?
It's true, right? So he was looking through our Jackson Hole book 2 nights ago. He was over for dinner, and he's looking through it, Brad, and he goes, Teddy, some of these guys are incredible. And then he goes, and some of them are super average. And he could just tell, not knowing, but looking at the quality of the photography. Images are absolutely everything. You've got to spend, it's just like building a house. I always go to experts like you, and I go, okay, Brad, here's my budget. Where should I spend money, and where do I? It would be a waste of money because nobody's going to see it. Mm-hmm. Photography for any business is critically important. They need to spend that because that's the sex appeal that gets people's attention. Another thing, I had a meeting with my web designer today, and he's just done an incredible job for us over the past 3.5 years. And we were talking about a lot of our clients, and we've started to kick back photos, Brad, of people. If they're not good photos, we'll just say, you know what, we're going to do you a disservice and hurt your brand as opposed to help you. And at the same time, we're going to hurt our own brand if we allow substandard stuff in the magazine. So we have become a lot more diligent, a lot more critical, and just want to make sure that if you or Gurley or somebody, because your photos are fantastic, we don't want somebody in there that's going to be marginal because it's not going to help your brand either. And so now we've started with our company under Here and Now Media Group. We're going to help clients with their websites, because you can't believe how many A-list businesses, not generally the architects or builders or interior designers, but the subs, their stuff is substandard. And so now all of a sudden, people will go from our website, which, we pride ourselves on our professionalism, they'll click into theirs and there'll be a total disconnect. And it doesn't have to be that way.
I love that you brought that up. I mean, photography is super key. And it's funny because as I go, I spend a lot of time on social media. As I go through, I can see builders that are really good, and yet their photography is not good, and the lighting's bad, and the clarity's not good, or there's something distracting. It's like, this is someone who could really take over social media if they only understood the power of what they have. They just haven't understood how to present that in a professional way. And to your point of the website is really key, because although a website for some people is a landing page still, and it's an online resume, it's a working resume, right? And a lot of us, although are spending time, and this is why this conversation is super important, because I know as I network with builders and designers and architects, a lot of them are like, well, Brad, where should I focus my time? And they may focus on Instagram, or they may focus on YouTube. But it is important to be on all the platforms, even if you don't spend a ton of time, but there's different demographics. That's what we talk about, print media and Build Magazine, how key that is. And the website's key too, because the SEO, right? If you're blogging, if you have keywords, add keywords. Google has their own app, My Business Google, that you can download, which is going to draw people. Again, you could post the same thing you post on Instagram, you put on the My Business Google app, that's drawn. And that's why it's super key that you have a good website that's running fairly quickly, where people aren't sitting there and it's just spinning forever, and then they get tired and they click out, right? Because the website isn't processing. So you have to understand all those elements, how quick it is, the photography on there, and how they can move around between page to page. And the biggest thing is formatting, right? It looks one thing on a desktop, it looks different on your phone. Yeah. And you have to make sure that works between both.
Well, and what you just said is incredible, because you mentioned Google My Business, which is a pretty important and simple thing to do. We just literally, Adam and I were talking about that with Leslie this morning, about we can help them with their Google My Business. And it's very simple, but if you're not in that realm, or I'm a contractor, or I'm an iron worker, I don't know anything about the web, and I hate the web and all this stuff. Ultimately, people are going to go to your website. They might not follow you on social media, but at some point they're going to go to their website, because somebody's going to say, Brad Levitt's going to say, hey, you should check this guy out. And I go to their website, and I even said this to you with a few people you referred me to. And it's like, dude, their website is lousy.
Yeah.
And it's like, and you go, yeah, I know it is, but they do incredible work. Well, it's got to be harmonious.
Are you A+? Are you professional? Are you cream of the crop? Or are you not?
Right. And I always laugh at people, and they go, oh, well, you know what, print doesn't work, or, I do all this, or I do all that. It's like building a house. You have a foundation. There are certain things that you need, and different components. You need bricks, you need foundation, you need windows, you need roofs, and it's not just one piece, and you can't take one piece out. If you're building a brand, there's a variety of things that go into. It's not just, well, I do everything with my website, or I do everything on Facebook. No, it's a collective.
I love that you broke it down that way, because as you listen to this, you could be into building science, you could be into net zero, and you can have the bones, the structure, fantastic. But if your painter and your trim carpenter suck, right? When people walk through, they're not going to see, all the net zero, the ICF walls, the SIPS panels, whatever. They're not going to see that. They're going to see the crappy paint, the crappy grout lines, the tile that's not even. And that's the whole thing. It's the whole process there, right? And that's why for a turnkey house, if you want it from foundation to completion, as a business, you have to look at it the same way. And this is why it's key what you're bringing up, Ted. And I love as we've gone down this conversation, because as you understand the value of your website, the value of that blog content, and WordPress, whatever you use on the back end, and then you understand the value of the social media apps and the value of print media, now they harmonize together. Now they're all working together. And My Business Google app, which most people don't even know or use, you can register your company through Google. You get the blue check through Google. All you have to do is register your company. You can put the same content, and it's just driving eyes, thousands a month to your website. Nothing to do with any of the other apps you're already doing.
And it's amazing how few people do it.
And no one uses it. I just sat down today with a gentleman. We had lunch that does irrigation. Last week I was with one of my cabinet vendors, and none of them even heard of it. They've never used it. And I'm like,
isn't that funny?
It's right there. And these are people that are really active. They're looking to grow their presence, whether it be on LinkedIn or other app platforms. And they're out there. You just have to spend a little time, and it's not the time consumption. And, but it's like you said, Ted, that the core of this, the core of success of Build Magazine is the relationships you build. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure I was going to ask you, as you make these relationships, you learn the curiosity, you ask questions. How are you getting this traffic? How are you getting this clientele? Oh, here's this. And then you apply it, right? But it's not going to happen unless you're meeting people and asking those questions.
Yeah. And I just find that there's so many people out there, like you just mentioned, and there are simple things that they could do that they don't do. I think part of it is they don't even know where to start. Just like me with the box. The box was sitting in my brain. I've had this idea about the TV show for a year and a half, and I thought it was going to be on YouTube, and then I thought it was going to be on HGTV, and now we're going to launch it on Instagram TV. And sometimes they come quickly, and sometimes they just sit there and they percolate and they fester, and all of a sudden something falls into your lap, and you go, okay, now I've got the pieces of the puzzle, I can put it together. And I think that we're going to be able to help a lot of our clients, if they want it, very cost effectively and easily, to take over some of their intimidation of, well, I don't know anything about social media, or I don't know anything about Google My Places or Google My Business. And it should be, I think it'll be a pretty exciting venue.
Well, it's amazing because most people in print media, it's been a struggle, right? You think about a lot of them in print media have had their challenges, and really they, I don't know enough about their business to say why or what people are doing, whereas you found tremendous success in yours. You found success because you're very targeted, you're a good networker, you're a good communicator, and you've built this amazing product which people want to have. So what do you enjoy most about the print media sector? What do you enjoy most about running Build Magazine?
I'll tell you one thing that we learned with this magazine, Brad, is the power of no. Had I known the power of no, women would have been all over me in high school. But seriously, we tell more people no, it doesn't fit. How did you find us?
So how do you do that? Because it is powerful to be able to say no and have the audacity to do that, or at least understand your magazine. But I would imagine you get pushback like, hey, Ted, I want to be in your magazine. No, Brad, you're not a fit.
Right.
Okay, well, why not? Or maybe how do you keep them from getting offended or just that pushback?
I tell them the concept and the mandate of the magazine is to have the A-list of people in the trade. And you might be an up-and-coming person, but you're not there yet. And I say, you're just not there yet. I can see the direction that you're moving, but your photography, your website, you haven't been referred by people. Or they'll say, and I had one of my team members say a friend of his does all the insurance for the high-end homes in Sun Valley. And he goes, and he wants to advertise. I said, no. He goes, why not? It's money. It's, and I said, and it would ruin our business. Our business would be gone tomorrow if we compromised. I guess that's probably the easiest word is you can't compromise. You got to believe in what you're doing. I don't think Steve Jobs compromised ever.
Right.
And I think you just got to believe in what you're doing, stay the course, listen to people as they give you feedback and evaluate, yeah, that makes sense, or no, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's really good perspective, Ted. You think about that ability to hold firm, and I look at this as a business owner, so I'm interpreting what you're saying about being precise, not compromising, understanding your mantra there. Okay, as a builder, how do I do that? Well, I may have a client push back and say, hey, Brad, I want to hire my brother, this electrician, or I may not want an interior designer for my project, whatever it may be. They may have these certain requests, and I already know this is our brand, this is our reputation, this is what makes a project successful. And the more I understand and define and dictate the parameters which makes me successful as a company and as a brand and that SOP, the more I have that document and understand that, I can now stay in my lane, right? I can understand that when the client's pushing on me to do something outside of that, no, this is what's made us successful, or this is what deters us from success is when we go outside of that.
Right.
And so the more that confidence shows, and you can do it in a way that's not detrimental to the person.
You don't have to be a jerk.
Yeah, you don't have to be disparaging to them. Like, you can do it in a way that's, no, this is our parameter and you need to be in this box.
Yeah. Yeah. And to be polite about it, but being firm about it. I think that people respect when you, like you said earlier, when you say, I don't know, but I'll find out. They have more respect for you because they don't feel like they're going to get snowed.
Right.
I'm going to give you the straight goods. You might not like it, and I understand that. You're probably not going to like what I'm going to say, but I'm giving you my perspective. And if you want a second opinion, totally cool. I encourage that.
It's funny because I learned that young in my career. I actually worked for a different builder. We were working on this hotel, and there were quite a few of us superintendents because it was a big project, and we all had our area that we were working on in the hotel. And one of our superintendents, he never had a notepad with him. He never had a notebook. And this is before we are now with phones and iPads and stuff. So he never has a notepad. And every time the supervisor or the owner or the architect would come out and say, hey, here's that punch list item or here's this you need to do. He'd say, oh, I know. And he'd never write it down. And finally it got to the point where, after the
Would he
repeat,
get it done?
He would never get it done because he's just like, I know. Or, hey, you need to check, that paint line or whatever. Oh, yeah, I know. And they were so frustrated because they're like, well, if you know all this, why isn't it done? Why am I telling you about it, right? And he ended up getting terminated and being let go. And it's to that point, Ted, that, we have to be documented. We have to understand that. We have to be descriptive. And that follow-through is key, right? And if we don't know the answer, we don't know. But we still have to have defined parameters for, to be successful. Yeah. So what do you do for fun?
I golf and I travel. So we made a decision early on. My kids mean everything, and my wife, we've been married 33 years. We do everything together. And we've been to 50 states, 10 provinces in Canada. My wife's been to 9. My kids have been to 48 and 47 states, I believe.
That's amazing. You keep track of that, too.
Oh, we're just little nerds. We've been to 20 national parks. We've been to 5 continents. My kids studied abroad. My daughter in Bolivia for a year, and our son went to Seoul, South Korea for a year of school. And our attitude from day one is, if you don't like my family or my wife or my kids, you're not going to like me, so we won't do any business. Because they went everywhere.
Yeah.
And consequently, the kids were always the focal point. So we love hockey, we love golf, and we love to travel.
It's amazing. And I will say from a golf side, I played with you. And what's really frustrating playing Ted is he never misses the fairway and he pars every hole. So unless you're dead on, you're never going to beat him.
Apparently you have got amnesia and you've gotten hit in the head, because I do make mistakes quite often.
It's very rare. That's why he almost won his guest member championship. But Ted is a phenomenal golfer, I will say. He's fun to get out with. But, that's another key. One thing, when you start thinking about, you have hobbies, right, as an individual. You vacation's important to you. Golf's important to you. Your family's important to you. And what I've seen is you've implemented those in your business and personal life, and then also your connections. So when you're thinking about now in Scottsdale, you go out golfing and you're inviting vendors, you're inviting clients, myself. And these are relationships that are continued to be fruitful and beneficial. And you're still, utilizing your hobbies and your interests, but then bringing others into that world.
Yeah, I'm a huge advocate for... I love money, but money's not my driver. It's a byproduct of doing a good job. My family and my friends mean everything. We entertain a lot because I want people to be around, and my whole goal in life is I want to have fun. I want to have fun with the people around me, and if they're not fun, and I'm sure you're the same way with your clients, Brad, is you're going to have clients that you want to hang around with that become your friends after or during or before, because I'll build you a house and I'll do a great job and it'll be an AFT house that you can be proud of. There's nothing worse than going into a house or cutting corners on anything just because I'm trying to make it fit in a budget. And all of a sudden, you're sitting there for the next 5 years looking at this part that you cheaped out on, and you're annoyed with it every time, as opposed to just sucking it up. Long after the check is cashed, now you've got the enjoyment or disenjoyment of, man, why did I do that? Why didn't we just do it right? Just do it right the first time.
It's a lot easier to sleep at night, right?
Oh, yeah.
Through those relationships. But I love that you mentioned a couple things. When you talked about your goal, and this is really key. I have a lot of builders and young entrepreneurs reach out and, they'll ask me, okay, Brad, for example, I'm trying to figure out growth, right? I want to grow my company. I want to grow my crew size. Or I may be purchasing the company from my parents. And so how do I start creating these systems? And I always ask them, well, before you focus on the business, what is your goal? Like, what do you want to achieve? Are you looking, what's your definition of success? Do you want to travel? Do you want
Great
6 weeks
question.
off a year? Do you want to be make more money? You know, do you want to have more time for activities like golf, like you mentioned, or other things? You have to understand as a business owner, what do I want in my personal life? And now the business will cater to that. And the reason I say that, because I know a guy, he's not married, single guy, and he just wants money, and that's his pursuit. And yeah, he can run 9 jobs. He has no staff. He's doing all himself, one-man band, right? Or you could say, well, you know, I want to actually develop people and crews, and I want to have them so that I have more time. I may make less because I'm paying more people now, sure, but I have the flexibility to travel. I have the flexibility of free time. So you have to understand what your goal in life is first and what you want to achieve. Now your business is set up to, you know, to hit those goals and hit that perspective.
Yeah, it all depends on who you are. Like you mentioned that guy he sounds like he's got no life to me. I mean,
works his life. Yep.
Yeah, and there's so much. We only have one life, and I guess it's, you know, who's your God, or yep, what's you don't want to be controlled by somebody else. You want to be controlled by yourself. I had a buddy of mine 20 years ago when we came down to the States. We immigrated from Canada, and he said, when you don't have any expectations of your friends, you're never disappointed.
Right.
And it's so true.
It's true.
It's so true.
Yeah.
You know, people get disappointed because they have expectations and
right,
nobody ever meets them.
Right.
And it's like, why don't you just look in the mirror and be happy with you, and then enjoy the people around you for their warts as well. I was, you know, as I do these podcasts and meet people like you, I realize that there's some pretty impressive people with some very impressive resumes, and at the end of the day, they all put their pants on the same way. Yes. I met Jack Nicklaus when I was 18 years old. I was a waiter in a really good restaurant in Toronto, and he was there for the Canadian Open, and I was his waiter. It was in a private dining room, and he was such a nice man. He was so courteous, and he was in the you know, the heart of his career, and he was just a regular person.
Yeah, and so many people are, and it's amazing. I love how you said, you know, if we don't have expectations for our friends or others, right, we can't be disappointed.
It's true.
And to that point, it just reminded me when I was a young, you know, hothead in my career. I was 25 working for a company. I remember the framer came in and he said, "Brad, you get offended easily, don't you?" And I was like super offended that he told me that, right? And then it dawned on me,
were
like,
you really?
I was. And then like later that night, I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, yeah, I'm offended because he just said I get offended easy. Like, this is stupid. What am I doing here? And it really allowed me to make some corrections, right? Because I'm like, if I get offended easy, like, you know, or I'm sensitive or whatever it may be, I need to fix that, right? And so now at this point in my life, it's a lot different, right? It's, as you mentioned, you know, and part of this comes with relationships and networking and everything else running a company, but you tend to not be pushed with the winds of the sea, right?
Yeah.
You're a little bit more stable, and your goal and mindset, you understand, you know, relationships, that problems can be worked through. You don't focus on the failures, you focus on the successes, and there's different mindsets that do change. And so, but all that comes with time.
There's a story, and I'm going to share it only because it's such a funny, ridiculous story. But when I graduated from high school, I was not the best student in the world. So I go to this university in Canada, which would be like Stanford. I mean, it was a pretty good university. And I partied so hard. I mean, I had a blast. But in 10 classes, I got 7 Fs, 2 Ds, and a C. And my kids teased me about the fact that, Dad, you didn't get a 4.0, you got a 0.4. And then I went to university. I went to Georgia Southern, and this is in the mid-'80s, and I drove down there because my grades were so bad. But I had a friend of mine who was playing on the PGA Tour, and he knew a bunch of coaches, and he goes, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I go, "You know what? I'd like to give golf a try, and if I don't succeed, at least I don't have regrets looking back." So I applied to 10 schools. My grades were so awful, I got into one. And I had to drive down and do an interview. They said, you're in Toronto. You're 1,000 miles away. Just send us a letter, because we didn't have emails back then. They said, just send us an essay on why you think you ought to be approved. I go, no, you know what? If you're going to say no to me, you're going to say no to me to my face, and I'm going to give it my best shot. So I drove down with my mom. And I got down there, and I'm sitting there with the dean of admissions, and he was a big golfer, and so I got along great with him. And I sat down, and I go, you know what? driving down here, there were a lot of potholes in the road, and I could have turned around and gone back, didn't want to run the car, or I could have just taken a detour and got back on the road and come down. I said, that's basically my path for wanting to get into school. And so he goes, you know what, son? He goes, we'll take a chance. Sure enough, I graduated, got a degree in finance. That was it. And my kids go, Dad, you've got to be kidding. And I go, nope, that's how your dad got into school and got, finished it. Because you have to look at failure. They do make the funniest stories. You have to laugh at yourself. That's the other thing is I really, truly believe, Brad, that some people just take themselves too seriously. Get over yourself. You're going to break your nose. You're going to scrape your knees. You're going to fall on your face. And it's the people that get up, dust themselves off, and keep grinding away and keep working. It's like my favorite expression is Nike. There is no finish line, because there isn't. Retirement, what's that? Retirement is when you're dead. Mm-hmm. I mean, if Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger are still working and they're 90, there is no, just enjoy life. Don't try and look for the out card. It doesn't, it exists if you want it to, but just go and have some fun. Meet some new people. You could be 85 and still meet new people and have fun.
I love that. I mean, the quote of the day, right? Life is a bunch of potholes, right? So,
life is a bunch of potholes.
Don't focus on the failure, though. And I will say Mark Candelaria, who's here, he's always been big on that. Hey, don't focus on your failures because other people aren't, right?
Right.
So focus on those successes. So for you, Ted, being that you're born in Toronto, went to Georgia Southern, how's that, do you have dual citizenship? You working through that?
Became a U.S. citizen. I do have dual citizenship. I got to, you reminded me of one thing. So before I forget, you mentioned Mark, who's just a champion. I just think that guy is so neat. But I just look at perspective on life and I go, 90% of the people don't care how you're doing. And the other 10% wish you were doing worse. So just be your own fan club.
Yeah.
Believe in yourself. Do what you love to do, and if you do, you're going to be successful at anything. Anyway, getting back to, we immigrated here in 2001, became U.S. citizens 3 or 4 years ago, and America is where any knucklehead like me can achieve success because there is no class system. Not like if you go to Europe where it's hard to get from one class to the next. If you're always a bricklayer, that's what your family did. That's what you're going to do. America, if you come up with an idea, most of the successful people in this country, they started with nothing. Mm-hmm. And now look at them. That's how great this country is.
Yeah, it's what you make of it, right? And a lot of that goes down to the frame of this conversation, right? Perspective, hard work, just that networking. I mean, these are all keys to building a secure livelihood and building that community. And Ted, you've been amazing. I mean, you've built an incredible network. You've built an amazing company, an amazing brand. Thanks. So what's upcoming and exciting for Build Magazine?
Well, we want to get this TV show off the ground.
Do you think that's on me. Help? So yes, which I will update you on. We will have that video. So for those of you listening, we will have some video content done on this incredible project. We've released like little snippets of the house, but to do the video with you, with our designer, so Kristen Forgione from Lifestyle Co. And it's an amazing project. It's gonna be mind blowing when this video is all done.
So what the plan is, we're adding new markets this year. We are really developing what we can do holistically, not just in print, but the whole media buzz for our clients, helping them out, like I was talking about with their websites and things like that, but also releasing these podcasts every week, which have been amazing. And we love you for giving us Greg from Koi Koi because he's a tremendous asset. And then I think the next thing that we're going to embark on is, like I said, this TV show, which we're super stoked to do the pilot and see where it goes from there. But the concept of it is to be in a $10 or $20 million home with the interior designer and builder or architect and builder, have the host go through the home, for half an hour, get some ideas, because these are homes that most normal people would never see. And I just think it would be a really exciting thing for people to see the cool technology and the cool new nuances. Like one thing that we're excited about is and this is a very simple thing, but putting lights in drawers. So when you open the cutlery, the lights come on. I mean, I know it's not fancy, but it's just new ideas. So the TV show hopefully will explore things. And everybody we've talked to, all of our clients, when we share with them the idea, they love it. And now I'm just trying to figure out, which I don't know how to do yet, and if you know, Brad, great, but is to create a series so that people can go back to our website, buildmagazine.com, every week and get an update of what's going on in the construction of the feature home of the year, and do one home in each market. So one in Park City, one in Jackson, one in Naples, one in Palm Beach, one in Scottsdale, because I think people would be interested in that.
Yeah, you'd take off. I know a lot of YouTubers will use that process, creating the episodes for people to follow along.
Great.
So where can our listeners find you?
They can find us at buildmagazine.com. We'd love them to go check our podcasts out on Spotify or Amazon or the normal podcast methods under Friends of Build Magazine. They can follow us on Instagram at BuildMags. And we just started a Pinterest page, I was told by Adam this morning.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. Well, we'll have all that tagged, in our social media and on our show notes. So, Ted, can't thank you enough for making time today.
Hey, Brad, thanks. And I'm looking forward to the next journey with you.